Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sam and today I am bringing you another game of TBR Jenga. So I filmed this video for the first time last month and it's actually become my most popular video on my channel so far, which seems really weird, but I really enjoyed filming that video, and if people enjoy watching it then that's great, and I'm going to give the people what they want. If you did watch last month's video then you'll know that in total I picked 6 books for my October TBR, and so far I'm pretty sure that I'm going to finish it. I've got 2 books left, but not like I've started them, so I've got half of one book and then about a third of the other book, which I can do that. There's a week to go, it's all going to be fine, which means that I won't have to roll any books over into next month, which will be great. Before last month I'd never really set myself a monthly TBR. I'd always been more of a mood reader, but I actually found that having a TBR and a list of books to work off really helped me, because usually I'll get to the end of a book and it'll be time to pick a new book to read and I'll get really overwhelmed because there's so many books that I want to read, and so having a short list that I can choose from really helped take away that stress. If you watched my last video then you'll already be kind of familiar with the rules. They're quite easy to follow. Basically I have a teeny tiny Jenga tower and on each of the blocks I've wrote a different prompt. Some of the prompts relate to genre, some of them relate to physical characteristics of the book, and some of them are just for fun. But what's going to happen is I'll pick 5 prompts initially, which will equal 5 different books. However, if I knock the tower over then I'll add a penalty prompt, which means that I'll end up picking 6 or 7 or 8 or however many, depending on how many times I knock the tower over, which hopefully will be none. I have also added some new prompts for this video, so if you watched my last video then you might remember that some of the blocks were blank because I was running out of ideas, but some people did actually leave me suggestions, so thank you if you were one of those. If you enjoy this video then please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you haven't already, and let's pick the first prompt. So the first block came up as mum picks, which I was really excited about because this is one of the new prompts that I added based on suggestions that people made on my last video. I was kind of feeling in the mood for a thriller, so I sent my mum a list of 4 thrillers that I really want to read and asked her to pick one for me to read in November. So of the books that I sent her, she ended up picking Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, which I think is about a woman who accepts a job apartment sitting in this quite famous building. I think that there's a lot of high profile people that live there, like celebrities, and so there's a few different rules that she has to stick to, like she's not allowed to stay out overnight and she's not allowed to have any visitors. She ends up making friends with another apartment sitter that also lives in the same building, and this friend starts to tell her that something isn't quite right with the building, but at first she kind of laughs it off and doesn't take it seriously until the next morning this friend goes missing. And so the rest of the book is her trying to work out what is going on. I've heard quite a few people talking about Riley Sager's books and how they are really good, and I'm always on the lookout for a new favourite thriller author, and I think that Riley Sager has the potential. The second block that I picked was Big Book, and if you're a regular on my channel then you'll know that big books kind of scare me. But I do have a few big books on my list, and the one that I've gone for is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I really hope I pronounced that right. This is I think over 700 pages, so it's pretty chunky, and I've seen a lot of people reading this recently. I think it's been out a few years, but for some reason it's building a little bit more hype. And from what I understand this is about 4 friends who have just graduated college and they moved to New York, and the book kind of follows them and their relationships and their lives. What I do know is that of the people that I've seen that have read this book, a lot of them have said that it's quite emotional, and a lot of them have said that it made them cry. I'm also pretty sure there's quite a few trigger warnings for this book. Obviously because I haven't read the book then I don't know what they are, but please make sure you check that out if it's something that concerns you. But I picked this up a few weeks ago. I saw it in a 99p Kindle deal and I thought for a 700 page book that's a bargain, and so yeah, hopefully I'll get around to reading it in November. So as you will have seen from the clip just there, I knocked the damn tower over, which means that at the end I will be picking a penalty book, taking my total TBR up to 6. However, before the tower fell over, I did manage to pick a prompt, which was pick a new book in a series. And there's a few books that I could pick for this, because there are a few books that I want to read at some point. There's actually 2 read-alongs in November that I do want to join in with, but for this prompt I've decided to go for Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. The main reason why I wanted to read this book is because I read Strange the Dreamer, that duology by Laini Taylor, earlier this year, and I absolutely loved it. It's one of my favourite fantasy series, and so when I saw that Maddie and some of my other favourite YouTubers are running this read-along starting in November, I thought, yeah, perfect opportunity. I definitely wanted to take part. I will leave a link to Maddie's announcement video in the description if you did want to check it out, but Daughter of Smoke and Bone, I think it's set in Prague, and I think it follows a young girl who gets caught up in this otherworldly war. Like I said, the main reason why I want to read this is because I absolutely loved Laini Taylor's writing, and so if the writing in this is as good as it was in Strange the Dreamer, then I'm sure I'm going to love it. I do also really want to read The Bear and the Nightingale, which is part of the Winter Night trilogy, which is another read-along that's being hosted by Meg from Meg with Books, so I'll leave a link to her announcement video in the description too. Hopefully I'll have time to do both, but we'll see. So the 4th block came out as favourite authors, and for this I have a few different favourite authors depending on the genre, but I decided to go for another fantasy, and the book that I've decided to go for is House, Firth and Blood by Sarah J Maas, which is about a woman called Bryce who I think is half fae, and she teams up with this fallen angel to investigate the death of her friend who was murdered by a demon, and it all takes place in this Crescent City, and this is the first book in a series. It's actually Sarah J Maas's first adult fantasy series, and so far most of the reviews that I've read have been really positive, and so my expectations are pretty high, especially considering the fact that I absolutely loved the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which is also by Sarah J Maas. I read that earlier this year in August, and I finished the whole first three books in a week, and I became obsessed, and so I'm already pretty sure that Sarah J Maas is one of my favourite fantasy romance authors, but I feel like if I enjoy Crescent City, then that's definitely gonna solidify her place. Book number 5 came out as one-word title, and for this I had to have a bit of a think, because the first book that I could think of that had a one-word title I'm really not in the mood to read, but I did, after going through my Goodreads, like my TBR on Goodreads, I came up with Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which is non-fiction, and I think it's kind of like half memoir, half self-help book, but one of my friends recommended this to me, and I've managed to get hold of the audiobook so I can kind of listen to it on my daily walk, and I don't think it's a long audiobook. I think it's only 8 hours long, so it should be quite quick for me to get through. From what I understand, the author is an activist and humanitarian, and this book kind of follows her journey of letting go of the world's expectations and kind of embracing her true untamed self, or at least that's what it says on the blurb. The tagline of the book is "Stop pleasing and start living," and so yeah, sounds like the kind of thing I'd enjoy. I like listening to non-fiction and especially memoirs as an audiobook, and I think this is also narrated by the author, which again is something that I enjoy. The final book that I chose, which was my penalty book for knocking over the tower, was Travel the World, and this came up on my last TBR, which is someone trying to tell me something, because we're in a pandemic and I can't travel the world right now. But the book that I decided to go for is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I've wanted to read this book for so long, and I'm pretty sure that it's set mostly in Singapore. It's a romantic comedy that follows a woman called Rachel who has been dating this guy Nick for quite a while, and he was originally from London, or he grew up in London, but his family is from Singapore, and he invites her to this wedding in Singapore where she'll also meet his family, and she doesn't know that he is one of the most eligible bachelors in the whole of Asia, and that his family are super rich. And Nick is convinced that his family are going to absolutely love her, but things don't quite go according to plan. Like I said, I have actually seen the film of this, but it was quite a few years ago now. I think I saw it the year that it came out, and so I'm kind of familiar with the story and I kind of know what to expect, but I don't remember all of the details. Okay, so there we have it. Those are the 6 books that I am planning to read next month. Like I think I mentioned earlier, I do also want to read The Bear and the Nightingale as part of the Winter Night trilogy read along, and I also need to read The Two Towers, the second Lord of the Rings book, as part of the Tolkien along read along. So yeah, why do I do this to myself? Thanks for watching if you have made it this far, and if you've read any of the books that are on my TBR for next month, please leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought of them. Let me know if there are any books that you are planning to read in November. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, I will have all of my social media links in the description. And I guess, yeah, without further rambling, I will see you in the next video. Bye.